It was the middle of the night, and I could barely keep my eyes open. I was a mailman in Denmark, cycling through the snow at 5:30 in the morning, delivering letters and packages to houses still dark and silent. But something was different that day. I had a feeling, a gut instinct, that today would be the start of something big. Little did I know how right I was. I was a teenager, trying to figure out who I was and what I wanted from life. I had a deep, intense longing for something more, something that would change everything. I was bored with the predictable future that stretched out before me. Becoming a teacher, living a safe, ordinary life, I wanted more. I wanted excitement, adventure, and I wanted it to make a difference. Music was my escape. I didn't have a record player until I was 13, but once I got one, it changed everything. I started listening to Elvis Presley. His music was like a bolt of lightning, something that shook me to my core. I remember the first time I heard Little Sister. It was different from anything I'd ever heard before. It was raw, powerful, and it made me feel alive. I wasn't old enough to remember Elvis's early days, the controversy, the way he stormed the charts in the 1950s. In Denmark, we didn't even get his records until 1958, and by then, the excitement was already fading. But when I finally heard his music, it was like a revelation. It was more than just rock and roll. It was a gateway to a whole new world. I started digging deeper, exploring the roots of rock and roll, discovering country, R&B, and gospel. I listened to Jimi Hendrix and Mahalia Jackson, the Beatles and the Rolling Stones. But no matter what I listened to, Elvis always came back to me. I wasn't the only one fascinated by Elvis. I found a couple of friends, Johnny and Erik, who shared my passion. We were all curious about the contradictions in Elvis's music. How could he go from singing Old MacDonald to Big Boss Man in just a few months? It didn't make sense, and we wanted to know why. But getting information was tough. Elvis's record company and management kept everything under wraps. Recording dates, session musicians, background details, none of it was public. We didn't give up. We wrote letters, made phone calls, and sent emails to anyone we thought might know something. We scoured old magazines, interviewed musicians, and tracked down any paperwork we could find. It was like a detective story, and we were determined to solve the mystery. We started collecting information piece by piece, and before we knew it, we had a treasure trove of data about Elvis's music. Our persistence paid off. We got hold of Steve Scholz's early paperwork, got a list of master serial numbers from RCA, and even corresponded with Elvis's producer, Felton Jarvis. One of the proudest moments was when Felton sent us a list of new titles from the Stax sessions, months before they were released. It was like we had a secret connection to Elvis, and it only made us more determined to uncover the truth. As we dug deeper, we realized that understanding Elvis's music was about more than just the songs. It was about the history, the culture, and the people behind them. It was about the passion and the creativity that went into every recording. And it was about the impact Elvis had on the world, how his music changed the course of popular culture. I quit university to pursue a career in the music industry, and eventually, I ended up working for BMG, the company that owned Elvis's recordings. It was a dream come true. I spent years restoring and releasing Elvis's music, listening to every tape in the RCA vault, and talking to the people who had worked with him. It was a journey that took me from a snow-covered street in Denmark to the heart of the music industry. And it all started on a cold morning, cycling through the snow, dreaming of a life that was more than just ordinary. That's how it began, and it's a story I'll never forget. I remember the summer of 1953, like it was yesterday. I was just a young guy, 18 years old, with a guitar and a dream. Music was my life, and I knew deep down that it was what I wanted to do. I grew up in a world where music was everywhere in the churches, on the streets, and on the radio. I sang along to everything, from gospel hymns to country ballads, and even the pop songs that were all over the airwaves. One day, I decided to take a big step. I walked into Sam Phillips' studio at 706 Union Avenue in Memphis. I had heard about this place where anyone could make a record for just a few dollars. I wanted to surprise my mom, but I think I also wanted to hear myself on a real record, to see if I had what it took. When I got there, Sam's assistant, Marion Kasker, asked me what kind of singer I was. I told her I sing all kinds, and when she asked who I sounded like, I said, "I don't sound like nobody." I was just trying to be honest, but I could see she was intrigued. I picked 2 songs to record, "My Happiness" and "That's When Your Heartaches Begin." I sang them with everything I had, but it wasn't easy. I was nervous, and my guitar skills were still pretty basic. After I finished, I waited, hoping Sam would come out and say something, but he didn't. Marion just made a note and told me to keep in touch. I left feeling a bit disappointed, but I didn't give up. Months went by, and I kept thinking about that day. I started dropping by the studio more often, just to chat with Marion. I even tried out for a gospel group called the Songfellows, but they turned me down. They said I couldn't sing harmony. It was a setback, but I wasn't discouraged. I knew I had something special, even if others couldn't see it yet. One day in January 1954, I went back to the studio and paid to make another record. This time I chose "I'll Never Stand in Your Way," and "It Wouldn't Be the Same Without You." I think I was trying to show that I could handle different styles, but again, nothing much happened. I still hung around the studio, hoping for a chance. Then, on June 26th, Marion called. She said Sam wanted me to come in that afternoon. I was so excited, I think I ran the whole way. When I got there, Sam had a song for me to try called "Without You." It was a ballad, and I really gave it my all, but it just didn't feel right. Sam listened and encouraged me, but he didn't have any specific advice. He just told me to keep singing and to let him hear more. Over the next few days, I kept thinking about what Sam had said. I knew he saw something in me, and that gave me hope. Around that time, I met a young guitar player named Scotty Moore. He was part of a band called the Starlight Wranglers, and Sam had suggested he reach out to me. Scotty and I got along well, and he brought his friend Bill Black, who played bass. We started jamming together, and it felt right. We were playing a mix of country, blues, and ballads, and I could feel something special happening. Sam must have seen it too, because he invited us to come back to the studio. It was a turning point for me. I had found some like-minded musicians, and we were all excited about what we could create. It was the beginning of something big, and I couldn't wait to see where it would take us. It was a Sunday, and we all met up at Scotty's house. I remember it well. We were just a bunch of guys trying to figure out what we had. Scotty and Bill, the 2 older musicians, didn't really know what to make of me. They thought my singing was okay, but they were more impressed by how I looked. I had on a black shirt, pink pants with a black stripe, white shoes, and my hair was slicked back with sideburns and a ducktail. I guess I looked a bit wild, but that was just me. The next day, after work, we all went to the studio. Sam Phillips, the producer, was there, and he seemed really determined to figure out what we had. He wanted to know why he couldn't get this kid out of his head. We tried everything we could think of. First, we did a country song called "I Love You Because." It wasn't terrible, but it wasn't great either. I mean, why would I sing a song that someone else had already done better? Then, toward the end of the night, something magical happened. Sam was in the control room, and he heard us doing something different. We were just fooling around with a blues song called "That's All Right," and Scotty, who's usually pretty reserved, joined in. Sam knew right away that this was it. He stopped us and told us to start over, and he hit the record button. We were relaxed and having fun, and that's when the magic happened. The song had a new beat, and it felt fresh and different. Sam was dancing in the control room, and I knew we had something special. We kept going and tried another song called "Blue Moon of Kentucky." It's a bluegrass song, but we turned it into something new. We changed the tempo and made it more rhythmic. Sam loved it and said it was the perfect B-side to "That's All Right." We were making a record, and it felt like we were onto something big. A few weeks later, we were back in the studio. This time, I wanted to try a song called "Blue Moon." I'm not sure where I heard it, but I thought it could be something special. We recorded it, but Sam didn't think it was a hit. He was right, but it was still a cool song. Then we did a few more songs, like "Tomorrow Night" and "Satisfied." I sang them well, but they didn't have the same spark as "That's All Right." We tried to make them work, but they just didn't have the right feel. Sam let me keep trying different things, and that's when we found Good Rockin' Tonight. It was another old R&B song, and we gave it our own twist. Sam wanted us to focus on the rhythm, and Scotty started playing in a new, more driving style. It worked, and we knew we had another hit. After the session, the tape was rushed to the pressing plant, and Good Rockin' Tonight, backed with I Don't Care If the Sun Don't Shine, became our new single. Sam was right, we had something special. The radio stations started playing our songs, and people in Memphis loved it. We were booked for shows, and the girls in the audience went wild. It was a new beginning, and we were just getting started. I remember when Sam got us a slot on the Grand Ole Opry in October. We were so excited, but when we got there, it didn't go as well as we hoped. The audience was kind of cold, and we didn't get invited back. It was a tough pill to swallow, but we couldn't let it get us down. After that, Sam thought it would be a good idea to try our luck at the Louisiana Hayride in Shreveport. The Hayride was known for taking risks and giving new talent a chance. It was where big stars like Hank Williams and Webb Pierce got their start. The radio station KWKH, which broadcast the Hayride, had a signal that reached across Louisiana and into Texas and Arkansas. That was important for us because the more people who heard us, the better. We played our first show at the Hayride in October at the Municipal Auditorium in Shreveport. Frank Page, the announcer, introduced us and talked about how our first record had done well. I was a bit nervous, but once I started singing That's All Right, I felt like I was back in the studio, just me, Scotty, and Bill. The audience was surprised at first, but they really got into it. They even asked us how we came up with our new style, and I told them we just stumbled upon it. That night, the manager, Horace Logan, offered us a contract to keep coming back. It was a big deal for us, and we were stoked. A few weeks later, we went back to the Hayride, and this time my parents came along to sign the contract because I was still underage. We played Sitting on Top of the World and some other songs. It was a great night, and we felt like we were really starting to make a name for ourselves. After that, Scotty and I started acting as the group's managers. We were getting more gigs, like at the Eagle's Nest in Memphis, and even some shows in other cities. But not all of them went well. One night in Jonesboro, Arkansas, only 32 people showed up. It was a bit of a bummer, but we didn't let it get us down. Then we played at the Palladium in Houston, and it went really well. The DJ, Biff Colley, liked us so much he asked us to stay for a couple more nights. It was a big boost for our confidence. We knew we needed more professional help, so Bob Neal, a DJ from Overton Park, started managing us. He had a big following and helped us get more gigs. We played shows all over the place, and Bob was always there to promote us. Sam Phillips wanted to get us back into the studio to record more songs. We went in and recorded Milk, Cow Blues Boogie, and You're a Heartbreaker. Milk, Cow Blues Boogie was a blues song with a country feel, and we thought it would be a hit, but it didn't do as well as we hoped. Maybe it was too black for some people, or maybe it was just too familiar. Either way, we were still putting out great music, and we knew we were on the right track. On New Year's Day, we played a big show in Houston, and a few days later, we played in New Boston, Texas. That's where we caught the attention of a guy named Colonel Tom Parker. He used to manage Eddie Arnold, and was now working with Hank Snow. Bob Neal told him to come see us at the Hayride, and when he did, he was blown away. He saw the way the girls reacted to me, and he knew we had something special. He offered me a spot on Hank Snow's tour, and we were excited to get more exposure. Sam wanted to keep the momentum going, so we went back into the studio in February. We tried out a few songs, including I Got a Woman and Trying to Get to You, but the one that really clicked was Baby Let's Play House. We started with Elvis singing Oh Baby, 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 and it just took off from there. It was a powerful song, and it showed how much we had grown as a band. We felt like we were really onto something. We played a big show in Memphis at the Ellis Auditorium, and that's where Sam and Colonel Parker met for the first time. They didn't get along, but they both knew how important it was to get me to the next level. Colonel Parker had already talked to some people at RCA, and he was trying to figure out how to get me signed with a bigger label. The Hank Snow Tour was a great opportunity for us. We played shows all over, and we got to see how different audiences reacted to our music. We even played in Lubbock, Texas, where a young Buddy Holly and Bob Montgomery opened for us. It was a big deal for them, and it was a big deal for us too. Back in Memphis, Sam was worried because the last single hadn't done well. He wanted to get another song recorded to go with Baby Let's Play House. We went into the studio and recorded I'm Left, You're Right, She's Gone. We did a slow version and a faster version, and we were happy with how it turned out. Things were moving fast, and we were excited about what was ahead. We knew we had a lot of work to do, but we were ready for whatever came next. Sam Phillips was always on the lookout for ways to make Elvis stand out even more. One day, he met a young steel guitarist named Stan Kessler, who had been hanging around Sun Records, hoping to get a chance to record. Stan came up with a cool tune called I'm Left, You're Right, She's Gone. We tried it out as a slow blues, but it didn't quite work. So, Sam brought in a teenage drummer named Jimmy Lott. This was the first time we used drums in an Elvis session. With the new beat, we rearranged the song to highlight its country sound. It really caught on, especially in Arkansas and Texas, where DJ were getting more requests for it than for other songs. In March 1955, we played a show at Eagles Hall in Houston. Scotty Moore, who was our lead guitarist, wasn't sure if the recording was made there or at an outdoor place called Magnolia Garden. The acoustics on the tape made him think it might have been outdoors, and the date could have been a few months later. We played a mix of old and new songs like Good Rockin' Tonight, Baby Let's Play House, and Blue Moon of Kentucky. The crowd was wild, especially when we did songs they knew from the radio. A few weeks later, in April, we played in Gladewater, Texas. The lineup included Scotty, Bill Black, Jimmy Day on steel guitar, and Floyd Kramer on piano. This show was broadcast on the Louisiana Hayride, a popular radio program. The crowd's reaction was amazing. They were screaming and cheering, especially for I Got a Woman and That's All Right. We even played Tweedledee, a song Elvis had told a young Waylon Jennings he might record, but he never did. Instead, Laverne Baker's version became a hit on the R&B stations, and Elvis really liked it. Bob Neal, our manager, was booking more shows to get Elvis national attention. He arranged a tryout for Elvis on the Arthur Godfrey Talent Show in New York, but the producers thought Elvis wasn't ready for the big time. Tensions were building between Bob and the Colonel, who was trying to take over more control. The Colonel was an experienced promoter, and he had big plans for Elvis. He promised national television and even movies, which was a lot to think about. In May, we went on a 3-week tour with Hank Snow, Farron Young, and other big names. The shows were in Virginia, the Carolinas, Georgia, and Florida. On May 16th, 2 guys from RCA, Brad McEwen and Chick Crumpacker, came to check out the show. They were there to support Jimmy Rogers Snow, who was signed to RCA. But when Elvis hit the stage, everyone was shocked. He was so raw and energetic, and his music was unlike anything they had heard before. Chick Crumpacker bought all of Elvis's Sun singles and took them back to his boss, Steve Scholes. Our new single, I'm Left, You're Right, She's Gone, was getting a lot of airplay. Cashbox magazine called it intriguing and forceful, with a solid beat. Baby Let's Play House was also making waves, especially in the South. DJ were pushing the songs because they were part of the Hank Snow Jamboree Tour, and they wanted to promote the shows. By mid-August, Baby Let's Play House was the clear winner, peaking at number 22 on the country charts. The Colonel saw the impact Elvis was having and started booking more shows. He got exclusive booking rights, which meant he could pitch Elvis to promoters all over the country. In July, we recorded a new single at Sun Studio. The aside was I Forgot to Remember to Forget, a country song that Elvis initially had doubts about. But with Sam's encouragement and a new drummer, Johnny Bernero, we slowed it down and made it work. The B-side was Mystery Train, a song Sam shared the copyright on. We added a beat from another Junior Parker song, and Elvis's laughter at the end became a classic rock and roll moment. In August, the Colonel met with Elvis, his family, and Bob Neal to discuss a new deal. The Colonel would become Elvis's special advisor, and he would get the rights to book 100 shows at a fixed rate. It was a big commitment, and Elvis's parents were hesitant, but they eventually signed. The Colonel promised big things, and despite some misgivings, he started to gain more control over Elvis's career. By August, Elvis was a big deal in the South, and we were getting more requests for shows. We played in Shreveport, Louisiana, and the crowd was wild. We were also getting more attention from DJ, and our new single, I Forgot to Remember to Forget, was climbing the charts. In October, we played a show in Cleveland, where Elvis was filmed for a documentary. But union issues kept the film from being released, and it was eventually lost. In November, we recorded more songs at Sun Studio. When It Rains, It Really Pours was one of them. The Colonel was pushing hard to get Elvis signed to a major label, and the pressure was mounting. Despite the tension, we were all excited about what the future held for Elvis. I stood there, guitar in hand, and I could feel the tension in the room. Colonel Tom Parker and Steve Scholes from RCA were hovering around, and I could tell they were hoping for something big. We were at RCA Nashville studio, and it was January 10th, 1956. I had just turned 21, and this was my first time recording without Sam Phillips. I was nervous, but I was also ready to show everyone what I could do. The first song we tackled was I Got a Woman. It was a Ray Charles song I loved to play live, and I knew it well. Scotty, Bill, and DJ Fontana were with me, along with Chet Atkins on rhythm guitar and Floyd Kramer on piano. We got into it, and after a few takes, we nailed it. The room relaxed a bit, and I could see the smile on Steve's face. He was happy, but I knew he was still waiting for the big one. Next up was Heartbreak Hotel. Me, Boren Axton, and Tommy Durden had written it, and I'd been playing it live for a while. It was a song that really connected with me, and I was determined to make it my first RCA single. We started playing, and I could feel the energy in the room. The lyrics flowed out of me, and the band was in sync. We got it right on the first few takes, and everyone was excited. Heartbreak Hotel was in the can, and I knew it was going to be something special. The evening session was all about Money Honey. It was a song I'd been performing for a while, but it was tricky to get right in the studio. We tried over and over, and it took a lot of effort, but we finally got it. We spliced together 2 of the best takes, and it sounded great. The next day we worked on 2 ballads, I'm Counting on You and I Was the One. These were different from the R&B and rock and roll songs I usually did, but I wanted to show that I could handle a variety of styles. Chet Atkins helped a lot with the arrangements, and I put everything I had into the vocals. I Was the One especially felt like a victory for me. It was one of those moments where I felt like I was really growing as an artist. When we finished, I was exhausted but happy. I had recorded 5 songs, and I was proud of what we'd accomplished. But back at RCA New York office, the reaction wasn't what I hoped for. They didn't like the sound, saying it wasn't as crisp as what Sam Phillips had done at Sun. Some even said I wasn't the right choice, that maybe they should have signed Carl Perkins instead. But I knew I had something special with Heartbreak Hotel. I believed in it, and I knew it was going to be a hit, and I was right. The song took off, and it was the start of a new chapter in my career. I was on my way to becoming the biggest star in the music world, and nothing was going to stop me. I booked time at RCA New York studios to work on the Nashville tapes, and to come up with a plan for Elvis's Sun material. I had bought all of Sam Phillips's Elvis tapes to keep Sun from piggybacking off RCA future success with Elvis singles. I also thought the tracks Sam had rejected as singles would make great album cuts. If Elvis turned out to be just another flash in the pan, I could forget about Heartbreak Hotel and repackage the best Sun titles. I Forgot to Remember to Forget, Mystery Train, was still selling well, so I mastered an EP with those 2 songs and other strong Sun items like That's All Right and Baby Let's Play House. I held it while I considered my options. Elvis's upcoming TV appearances were a real chance to make something happen. With the right song, there was still a chance that Elvis could go all the way. Elvis himself believed in Heartbreak Hotel, and with the TV shows in mind, I decided to make that the single. But I wanted to take out some insurance, so I scheduled Elvis for another session on January 30th, just 3 days after the release of Heartbreak Hotel, this time in New York City. In his distress, I called Sam Phillips, and unburdened all my doubts and those of my RCA colleagues. Sam didn't like Heartbreak Hotel, but he advised me to be patient. I was grateful, but I also wanted something more concrete. By the end of the conversation, I secured Sam's blessing to let Elvis record and release his own version of Carl Perkins's hit Blue Suede Shoes under certain conditions, of course. Elvis stayed in New York for more than a week, doing promotion work and going back into the studio with me. He also made his first appearance on Stage Show. To get a fuller sound, I hired a boogie-woogie piano player named Shorty Long. There were no backup singers this time, as there had been no other voices on the original Sun recordings. I was aiming to reproduce that sound. When we started the sessions at RCA Studios, things were a bit more difficult. Elvis's voice had a hesitation and stiffness in the 10 takes it took to produce a cover of Blue Suede Shoes. Maybe he felt uncomfortable stealing a former stablemate song, or maybe the unspoken doubts in the air about his potential were affecting him. I was still trying to figure out how to record him. Despite the technical limitations of the Memphis studio, Sam had managed to get a warm, natural sound. I couldn't replicate that, but Elvis's version of Blue Suede Shoes wasn't a failure. The energy and toughness were starting to replace the natural swing and charm of both Presley's Sun sides and Perkins's original. When we started My Baby Left Me, a song written by blues singer Arthur Crudup, things were different. The feel was close to that of the Sun sides, and I stuck to what had worked in the past. I didn't know what else to do with Elvis, but it wasn't a bad strategy. Of the many songs I'd sent him, only One-Sided Love Affair passed muster. Elvis and the band did their best to beef up the country song, and the result was more than worthwhile. The last song of the day was another Crudup cover, So Glad You're Mine. It fit Elvis like a glove, and he sounded totally confident. The band played better than you'd have thought they could from watching them live. The next day we recorded 2 more favorites. Elvis very much admired R&B singer Roy Hamilton, and he did an inspired job on I'm Gonna Sit Right Down and Cry Over You, a song he had sung on the Louisiana Hayride. His next pick, a cover of Little Richard's Tutti Frutti, leaned more toward the cleaner, almost northern aggressiveness of his Blue Suede Shoes. Where Little Richard had sounded manic, Elvis just seemed a little rushed. A few days later, we returned to the studio. Elvis took on Lloyd Price's Lottie Miss Claudie, and there was a little nervous laughter as they got going. It took the band about 10 takes to play a song without any serious mistakes, but it was almost never Elvis who goofed. In the absence of any more original material he liked, Elvis next turned to Big Joe Turner's R&B hit, Shake, Rattle, and Roll, which had made Bill Haley a national star. After a handful of takes, I suggested Elvis leave out the lyric, "You're wearing them dresses, the sun comes shining through." When the verse went out, so did Shorty Long's piano solo, and it took Elvis an additional take to get used to the change. In the end, I felt the song needed backing vocals, so Elvis and the band overdubbed the part themselves. At the end of the sessions, I was still feeling the same concerns I had at the start. I wrote to Colonel Parker that neither Lottie Miss Claudie nor Shake, Rattle, and Roll would be suitable for single release, but they would make good selections for the second album. The 8 sides from the New York sessions were a beautiful documentation of Elvis Presley, just before his style began changing. They were recorded professionally and would make excellent album material. But only Blue Suede Shoes would be strong enough for single release, and then only with Sam's permission. The TV appearances were crucial. The Dorsey Brothers stage show wasn't the hottest thing on TV, but its lackluster ratings made it more flexible in its bookings, and RCA influence made the difference. For a young, unproven artist like Elvis, 4 consecutive Saturdays of national TV exposure was unheard of. The show required that the songs Elvis performed be those that worked out best in rehearsal. The Colonel and RCA timed the release of Heartbreak Hotel to coincide with the first TV appearance, but Elvis didn't perform it on that first show. Instead, he performed high-powered covers of R&B material. He'd been playing around the South for 2 years. The performances were intense, and the nation got its first look at Elvis Presley, an awkward, wild, almost bizarre young man who made faces straight out of a silent movie farce while shaking his legs in a manner that had more to do with Southern Baptist revivals than prime-time TV. The set was dark, the lighting dramatic, and the lyrics were unexpected for the average white American household. On the third stage show, Elvis finally performed Heartbreak Hotel, and the performance was a reasonable approximation of the recorded version. The fault the first time out had been with the Dorsey Orchestra, who tried to fill out the song with a full band arrangement but achieved only confusion. That was the end of the fancy Dorsey arrangements. The Colonel, my manager, was always thinking ahead, always looking for the next big thing. By the time of my third show, he had already picked up an option for 2 more appearances at $1,500 each. But the Colonel knew he needed to get out of the deal with the Louisiana hayride. He chose to pay a $10,000 buy-out instead of sending me back to Shreveport for those small wages. With my TV performances going well, the Colonel's focus shifted to Hollywood. He had connections there, like Abe Lasvogel and Harry Kalsheim from the William Morris Agency, and he wanted me to show the entertainment industry that I had really made it. While the Colonel was busy planning, I was on the road every weekday, performing in a new town each night, often doing more than one show. My manager at RCA, Steve Scholes, was pushing the Colonel to get me back into the studio to record new songs. The first album, simply called Elvis Presley, was doing well, but Scholes wanted more material. In March, Heartbreak Hotel and Carl Perkins's Blue Suede Shoes both hit the Billboard charts. Heartbreak Hotel was climbing fast, but Blue Suede Shoes was even faster, becoming the anthem of a generation. I performed both songs on TV, and Heartbreak Hotel eventually topped Blue Suede Shoes. The night before my last TV show, I flew to New York while my band drove to see Carl Perkins, who was recovering from a car accident. I sent a telegram offering to help, and then performed Money Honey instead of Blue Suede Shoes on the show. The next day, I was heading to Hollywood for a screen test. With my first EP out, I chose the songs for my next TV show on The Milton Berle Show. I performed Blue Suede Shoes twice, and it was a great promotion for RCA. I looked better than ever, and Steve Scholes finally relaxed. Heartbreak Hotel was in the top 10, and the album was charting. Everything was going well at RCA, but Scholes was worried about the next single. He wanted an original song, and the Colonel had to let me get back into the studio. The Colonel arranged for me to fly to Nashville after a show in Amarillo. The flight was a nightmare. We almost didn't make it, but we finally arrived in Nashville. We recorded I Want You, I Need You, I Love You, but it was a tough session. We only had 3 hours, and I made a lot of mistakes. The session didn't go as smoothly as we hoped, but we got the song done. Scholes was disappointed with the session, and wrote to the Colonel about it. Despite the challenges, Heartbreak Hotel was a huge success. I won the Triple Crown Award, and the album was #1 for 10 weeks. RCA was selling more Elvis records than ever before. My 2-week engagement in Las Vegas didn't go as planned. The audience wasn't as enthusiastic as the young fans who usually flocked to my shows, but I enjoyed myself and saw other acts on the Strip, including Freddie Bell and the Bellboys. They performed a version of Hound Dog, and I loved it. I started including it in my live act after Las Vegas. For my second appearance on The Milton Berle Show, I performed Hound Dog in a way that shocked the audience. The next day, the press called me vulgar and obscene. The network even demanded that I tone down my act for my next TV appearance on The Steve Allen Show. They made me sing to a basset hound in a tuxedo, which was embarrassing. But I didn't let it get to me. I performed a triumphant outdoor show back home in Memphis, and I told the audience, you know, those people in New York are not going to change me none. I'm going to show you what the real Elvis is like tonight. After the Steve Allen Show, I went back to the studio in New York. We recorded Hound Dog and Don't Be Cruel, which became one of my biggest hits. The Colonel was always pushing me, but I was determined to stay true to myself. I was just a kid from Memphis, but I was making my mark on the world.